So I wanted to give some thoughts on the Hurricane Helene situation, which hit North Carolina in late September. And I'm going to start this out by reading a story that a woman posted to Facebook where she explains her experiences when she made her way back into Asheville after the hurricane had sort of died down. Now, Asheville was a place that was completely cut off. The roads were completely cut off because of massive mudslides and because of a bridge going down. And Asheville was probably the worst hit town of all of the places that were hit. And there were entire towns that were just completely wiped off of the map by this hurricane. And I'm going to read her account of what she experienced when she went into Asheville once it was semi accessible to check on her store. And it starts like this. Today I saw true devastation and death, and I am not okay. Today was the first day that I attempted to make it into Asheville to work. I wanted to check on the store and my staff and see my coworkers and to get some much needed supplies. I am still out of power and water at my home in Marion. With Highway 40 eastbound closed, I had to take back roads around it, in which included down close to Lake Lure and Chimney Rock, and then back up into Black Mountains and Swannanoa before finally into Asheville. The normally 40-minute drive to work took the better part of 2 hours, and in that time I saw things which will haunt me for the rest of my life. The lightest of things were down. Trees collapsed, power lines. I drove over and under so many destroyed power lines it wasn't even funny. Then I got into areas where I was driving over cliffs and the edges of collapsed roads, some of which had me wondering if I would even make it to Asheville alive or see my little girl again. Now, to give context to that, a lot of roads were washed out, and you had a lot of roads that the sides that were closest to the river were completely just broken off and washed off into the river, and all you would have was just this one other half of the road, which if you drove on it, it could give away at any time. On more than one occasion, my car felt as if it were slipping off the road. The road was collapsed in many places and slid down the mountains and or into rivers below so much that that barely one car could make it through. I even had to drive through what used to be a stream, which is now a small river, that had overtaken the bridge. It took me a while to get the courage to drive through it because I couldn't see the bottom and wasn't sure how deep it was or how safe it. And it cuts off there. As I drove through several areas where the storm had hit the worst, I saw bodies. Bodies of animals, wild and domestic, and then I saw human bodies who had gotten caught in the storms and the rivers. No, I am not kidding or exaggerating. At first I thought they were Halloween decorations or just clothes or something, but as I got closer, I could see they weren't. They were real. Real victims of Helene washed away by the storm. I saw their faces. Words cannot describe how much I am affected by these sights. Even worse, when I was able to get signal, when finally getting into Asheville, I called emergency to let them know about the victims, and was told they would get to them when they could, but they were currently overwhelmed with calls similar in nature and the disaster response. And honestly, they didn't know if and when they would be able to get to them. All of this happening while on the radio, which for Asheville has mostly become call-ins. A woman got on the call from Swannanoa to talk about the bodies she had seen floating down the river and piling up. And that's the end of that story. So something that I really noticed, and a lot of people noticed this too, within the first couple of weeks of when the storm finally finished and all that was left was destruction, was a very lack of emphasis or care on how just the depth of destruction and horribleness that this event took toll on these areas. From East Tennessee and all these different areas that were just not just flooded, but were left looking like they were hit with a nuclear bomb. And something that I noticed is that you didn't really see any real emphasis on the true extent of how devastating this event was outside of just local news outlets. And anytime, on rare occasions that it was mentioned in major news outlets, it was sort of mentioned in a kind of passing sort of way. Usually when you have a devastating event like this, you get a lot of publicity among politicians and also among a lot of celebrities. You know, I haven't really seen any major celebrities have anything to say about how terrible this really was. It seems, you know, the most like that people know about it, that anybody really cares, is that there was this hurricane and it did a lot of damage. Usually you would see something like, you know, all the celebrities joining in. As we all know, they're so quick to do. Oh, pray for such and such area. Pray for all these people. But there wasn't any of that whatsoever. And isn't that a little weird? And it's not just that the government was lackluster in their response, but it's just sort of everybody outside of the local areas didn't really seem to care. Especially within the first couple of weeks, all of the rescue work, all the videos of rescue and help getting in supplies into the areas that were cut off, you would notice that all these videos just showed what looked to be just only local volunteers wearing civilian clothing. You didn't see any major equipment moving around, nothing uniformed, aside from like a couple of distinct examples where they sent in a helicopter to get people off of a hospital roof. You didn't really see anything more than what was just, it was all locals and volunteers that were pulling together to help people out and help get supplies into these areas.
I hear the train a-coming. It's rolling around the bend. And I ain't seen the sunshine. I don't know when. I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on. But that train keeps a-rolling. All down the San Antonio. All down the San.
And I'll give an idea of why I think that is. And a lot of people who aren't familiar with this channel probably won't want to hear me make this situation about this. But I'll just tell you what I think. I think a lot of this has to do with just the way people feel about rural, southern, small-town America, especially when it comes to southern white people. Because you see how we were portrayed by big city people, big Hollywood people. We're just the Bible Belt rednecks who are just holding back the country. You know, there really isn't, you never really get anybody outside of these areas have anything positive to say about people of these areas. And you might say, well, wait a minute, but Asheville is a very blue area. They're very progressive. Well, I mean, I don't think they really care, honestly. I think, you know, a place like Asheville is still just hick town, small town America to them. And that's really how I think they feel about it. One other thing that also gets the tinfoil hat jogging is how in the world does a hurricane come in and do that much damage that far off of the coast? That's not something that doesn't just happen. And I feel like a lot of people that aren't in this general area don't understand that. People were saying things like, oh, why did these people just sit there and wait to get flooded? Well, this doesn't happen. I don't think that there has been a storm do this much damage, especially this far off coast, since there's even been towns in this land. And when you look at the way just everything just swept in, and the way these mudslides would just immediately just avalanche in at such speeds, there was no way that anybody could have seen this or been prepared for how hard this event hit these areas.
Oh shit! Get in the house! Go! Go! Get your truck going?
And there are a lot of theories that are hopping around. The first one I could get into is the lithium contracts. If you look up North Carolina September 24th lithium contracts, you will find that there were a lot of there were some contracts going out for lithium mines in North Carolina. People are thinking that there are theories, and I'm not going to speak 100% conclusively on this, but there are theories going around that a lot of the big damage and a lot of the lackluster response has to do with these lithium mine contracts. Of course, when you go and Google search it, all you get is just a bunch of news stations and news sites trying to sweep it up and try to sweep up how all these people are making these kooky conspiracy theories and how it's just a conspiracy theory. But if you look around, you will find an actual website that details the actual September 24 contracts. And you know what's funny is that Google did the same thing when there were rumors going around that any volunteer organization that was helping to raise donations and get help out to the area, that FEMA was heckling them and trying to push them away and not allowing their supplies to get in, and that they were nitpicking who could send help and who couldn't. And there were a lot of rumors that FEMA was doing that kind of stuff. And when you would go and look it up on Google, Google would only allow FEMA official websites dispelling all these rumors to show up in the search result. And that's something that Google will do on purposely. They purposely will tweak their search algorithms to make sure that you only get stuff that they want you to see. That's something that they admit openly that they do. Whether or not there was any weird, crazy tinfoil hat stuff going on, and whether or not the lithium mines have anything to do with it, I can't say. I'm not going to say conclusively what my thoughts are on that, but I do know for a fact that weather-altering technology is real. Anybody can look into that and see that it's real. They do have technology that allows them to exacerbate storms, to make them bigger, to make the rainfall heavier. And when you look at just how surreal the amount of damage that was done by this storm this far off coast, it really makes you think. Another thing about the damage that was done, a lot of the damage was caused from the from dam failures and also from major mudslides. Well, you know, dams can be hacked, dams can be sabotaged and backdoored. I don't know how, you know, they control function things and how the control rooms work in a dam. But let's say, for example, that the computing systems that they use to run these dams is Windows 10. Well, Windows 10 security was developed in Israel. And I'm just using this as like a random example. Israel developed Windows 10 security. So the way backdooring works is Israel could put in backdoors into Windows 10 security that would allow them to seep into it and hack things that are being run with Windows 10. That's an example of how backdooring could work and how that type of espionage and sabotage can work with technology. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't happen. Maybe something was sabotaged, maybe it wasn't. You know, it's worth keeping on the table. Another thing, the mudslides. Is it so far-fetched that maybe a couple of bombs was put up a couple of mountains to exacerbate the size of the mudslides to make sure they did some real damage? That's a little kooky, but you know, just a thought that I feel like is worth putting on the table. Something that did something like that go on, maybe it didn't. But if it's so improbable and insane, then let's see somebody make these storms and how insane these storms were make sense. Doing as much damage and wiping entire towns off of the face of the map, a full state over off coast from where the hurricane took place. Make that make sense.